Hey, it is showtime. All right, so I was in the mood, you know. I don't have to think about, oh, what am I? Am I gonna do the stream I'm doing, or am I gonna do a side questy thing, right? So this isn't a side questy thing. This is just the thing I'm doing tonight, right? So if this is a thing that I'm doing tonight, I don't know if it's gonna expand into anything else. It depends on how things evolve in the conversation about Iran. And things that it's quote all about, because I think at the end of the day we just don't believe, you know, it's just like, if people want to believe in fake reasons to go to war, that is not the fault of the leadership. If the leadership doesn't have a certain degree of control of the narrative when it comes to dropping in and getting the support to do a thing. When you're looking at it from on high and you are objectively dealing with an ignorant, ill-informed nation, you know? We're being lectured on how we're wrong about foreign policy from women who were drunk throughout their entire college thing. Or we're being lectured by women that were pretending they were against war, but they were really just trying to have us surrender to countries whose other ideologies they agree with more, right? Which is fine if that's what they were honestly doing, but they were dishonestly doing that, you see, right? We're living in very dishonest times. So we're going to take a closer look here, because what the IRGC, that is the crux of everything here, is kind of more of a parasite on Iran, right? Because I'm not sure how many answers because I've skimmed the sources I'm about to give you tonight. Because you know me, I kind of do this like raw, like in real time, right? I just make sure that the body of work is generally talking about what I want to talk about and is a kind of source that is informative about things, and then we have to ask ourselves what in there may or may not be a lie or whatever. Things like this, when I do them, I am not doing it because I am saying that these sources are not lying to me. This is about looking at sources and asking yourself, is the source lying to me? How do I find out if a source is lying to me? Those are important questions. How does one frame an argument? How does one frame a scene? How does one frame a slice of life? You slice Germany in 1939 one way and it's hell on earth. You slice it another, it's a fucking paradise. Depending on which side of the Jewish argument you don't understand is happening in the nuances of the fucking German language. If you didn't see me interpreting Heidegger You know, like, can we appreciate how freaking complicated German is? And and it's kind of a great language, though. But anyway. So anywho, by the way, tonight I picked Akvan from their album Savushun. That was called Aryan Fire. So they're it says folk black metal. I guess that's folkish. I wasn't sure what kind of instrument I was hearing in there. To me, it just sounded like it was in a folk, like, it sounded more like a clean tone guitar instead of electric guitar, just working in an Iranian scale structure, right? But either way, this is me keeping consistent with representation of the people here that I am interested in. I am interested in not whatever the secret agenda of the Lion and the Sun that nobody knows about except for the fucking Shaw's son or whatever. I'm talking about what is the way of life for the people? What is the problem with doing good reciprocal business? Like, everybody's complaint, like, if people hadn't noticed that all this is just about business deals, right? That's all. I mean, it's not all that this is, but when you look at the shit that isn't directly involved with something like the Zionism problem, everything is just it's trying to model itself after, like, you know, just American business people making agreements with each other and everything is cool, you know? But we're dealing with some very, very tough times because of these cancerous problems like the Epstein class, which is being used to attack capitalism. It's not just about Republican policies. You have to understand that we're kind of sitting in a time where right-wing politics across the West is the only thing holding up any semblance of a personal, independent, private market as a cultural idea, right? Regardless of the lies. The life has to reflect what they say is what things are, which is a place where your business can flourish and you pay your fair share into the system that gives you the society in which all of that works and protects the society in which all of that works. And lies upon lies upon lies make it fucking hard. And it's why people like me don't feel personally righteous in his heart saying anything unless I believe in anarchy, which is nothing like what the Democratic Socialists emblaze upon their things. It's an appropriation, just like somebody who does things in the name of being a Jew, right? I do things as I see fit in the proper, well-comprehended, understood, universal principle, basic, in good order definition of anarchy and natural law. It's not rocket science or brain surgery. It ought to be inherent, but people of the book have rationalized a bunch of fucking things connected to their personal judgmental opinions because of, quite frankly, an over smothering of a Jupiterian kind of principle. Right? There's a whole overarching fucking mythos of righteousness that then colors the doctrine of your life. And if you can't understand how that colors a whole society just because it has private business at this time, which makes it more complicated than it just being something, quote, socialist. But people fear certain levels of free speech. Women definitely have to, at the very least, have some sort of fucking head covering on. I suppose, and we're going to see some footage, you know, like, it doesn't have to be so fucking absolute, right? But you definitely don't see, I don't see women about. I see men about, and I think, and you see some women, but I think that there's stuff missing from what I've seen so far, right? I think that this is a game of what's missing, right? Because, like I said about Germany, you slice it one way, it's hell. You slice it the other way, it's paradise. It depends on what side of the game you've been fated upon and how distant your understanding of the other side can be, right? I can't be a full endorsement of what ICE is doing and detention centers for ICE are doing because I can't trust my sources on telling me that everything is a torture chamber or hunky-dory. But time goes by. And the question is, how much time has gone by? Right? What is considered a, quote, distraction? Nothing's a fucking distraction that's real. You are distracted by having a mind that cannot evaluate the realities that are unfolding in their due course. And people with a higher perspective than you are manipulating you by that merit. Which is why you have to pay attention tertiarily to what they are saying, because you're picking up on tone from and to sources and events and subject matters and things in a general sense, and then you go to your trusted sources once you hear about what's happening from their official sources. Let's actually fucking dive in. That was a really long-winded fucking explanation. So I've got these three bad boys here that we're going to operate with. So this is from IndianExpress.com. This was posted today, actually. How a paramilitary force became one of Iran's most powerful organizations. Formed in 1979 with the initial aim of safeguarding the Islamic Revolution, IRGC directly answers to the supreme leader. Today, it has its own ministry, a complex bureaucracy, and diversified functions in multiple spheres. Hi, Sleepy Time videos. What do you mean, why no pictures? Pictures of what? What are you looking for pictures of? Written by Nikita Mota. Actually, this was written March 13th, which was that, I think that was before the war started, but I think around the time that they were about to execute all those people that the left definitely doesn't care about, even though those are the kind of people that want to live the way the left lives in America. But the way that they imagined it, the screen is just black. Okay, well, I'm looking at the feed right now on my end, and it looks clear to me. I can see. And, I put my phone down somewhere. I don't know where my phone is. Close and reopen. Facts only. Thank you, facts only. Yeah, have him close and reopen, because I'm assuming you're not telling me to do that, because I have nothing to close and reopen. But sometimes a screen needs a refresher, especially if you're on your phone and you've got either an old phone or a phone that has been running for way too long. And eventually I will need to take a short break to find out where I left my phone, which I think was upstairs. But let's actually get into this goddamn show here. All right. All right. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps recently said that its navy fired on the Liberian-flagged Express Rome and the Thai-flagged Mayori Nari in the Strait of Hormuz after they ignored warnings highlighting its central role in the ongoing Iran-U.S.-Israel conflict. Established as a paramilitary organization in 1979 by Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, IRGC today has its own ministry, a complex bureaucracy, diversified functions, making it one of Iran's most powerful political, ideological, military, and economic actors. Who constitutes it, and how does it differ from the Artesh, the Iranian army? Hey, what's up, Pasta? Formation of the IRGC. The revolutionary leadership in Iran inherited the imperial army, among other institutions of the displaced regime, after the seizing power on the 11th of February 1979. However, they were doubtful about the loyalty of the Shah's army in the Revolutionary Guards in Iranian politics, elite and shifting relations from 2015. Author Behram Sinkhaya notes, a faithful and credible armed force which owed direct allegiance to Khomeini, the leader of the revolution, was deemed essential for the revolutionary leadership, both to safeguard the revolution and to enforce fundamental social political changes. I heard that the Air Force was a major player, especially what the Air Force was willing to do as soldiers on the ground. Don't worry, Pasta. I had a pretty long-winded introduction. To this end, they established the RGC, or the Sefa-i Pasdaran-i Enkeleb-i Islami, the Army of the Guardians of the Islamic Revolution, also known simply as the Sepah. The IRGC was taken with protecting the nascent Islamic regime and counterbalancing the distrusted imperial army, because the revolutionary leadership retained the Artesh while creating IRGC. Iran has since had two separate armed forces. All right, so it's very weird that they have this dual armed forces situation, right? And what is the American targets? What are the Israeli targets? How often is America targeting the national army, and how often is Israel targeting the national army, right? It's been 47 years. I'd imagine a lot of the national army is gonna just be IRGC loyalists at this point, or at least if they aren't in the IRGC at this point, they are ideologically aligned in some way, shape, or form, right? Like, this is the IRGC is basically this elite, it's an elite militia that probably had an elite guard that took care of the Ayatollah or whatever. And for some reason, this militia brought the army to its knees, right? And so, how does recruitment work if they have two bodies at the same time? Then how do they divvy between who gets to recruit who? Because I'm sure the IRGC wants to recruit within loyalties, right? And it's my understanding that the Islamic women, the ones that are double down on this stuff, that they have huge families of boys. All the, they, and all their men are destined to go, right? Because these are the fundamentalists, right? Just like fundamentalist Christians love the idea of recruiting their sons into the thing, right? And you're dealing with a whole lot of fucking world programming and family programming converging together to hold those loyalties together. The very existence of the IRGC affords the organization special status as it stands deliberately separate from the country's regular armed forces, writes Udit Banerjea in The Devil's Rebirth, the Terror Triangle of Ikhwan, IRGC, and Hezbollah, 2021. The head of IRGC reports directly to the Supreme Leader under Iran's constitution. The Supreme Leader alone holds the authority to appoint, dismiss, and accept resignations of IRGC Chief Command. Right. But the thing is that the IRGC wouldn't have always been a part of Iran's constitution. That would have been an amendment or a new constitution altogether. Right? Because this didn't happen. This wasn't part of Iran since, right? When the United States, when a political party loses, or in France, or in any of these countries, it's not such a fucking deal that they hoist a new flag. When the Nazis won Germany, they disbanded the flag, right? They changed it. They took the party flag and made it the national flag. The Islamic Iranian flag is a similar thing with the embleming. Now, national flags were a different kind of thing. Either in the early colonial imperial era, like the Age of Navigation, or just before the Age of Navigation, like more Middle Ages, with your standards of battle and so on and so forth, right? It's the difference between the original German flag versus the German flag after World War I versus the German flag during World War II. Right? Or, during Nazi times. It's wild when you think about it, right? There's a greater level of disrupting a power and a principality, right? When we all complain that, oh my God, two wings of the same bird. Yes, but spiritually speaking, that's actually fucking healthy, but we're in a false binary. I think it's very healthy that you have a polarity of the population between the left and the right in ways that manifest naturally. Now, unfortunately, what's been part of natural, at least thus far, is that most human beings are wired to be left-brained, right? And this also causes problems because, typically it is the right-brained men that have us be more left-brained. The right brain is yin. The left brain is yang, right? I'm a lefty, right? So I have a certain psychic connection to the yin energies by that merit, and it gives me the ability to have the interesting kind of relationships with women that are correspondent to that. Many of you just simply know me here because this is the one place where I'm public, except when I go out in public, and then nobody cares to listen. But that's okay. That's okay. I don't want to have that level of fame or something, because you need to have the money for it to live the life or whatever it is. All right. Sinkaya suggests that the creation of such an army is common after spontaneous revolutions, as was the case with National Guards in France and the Red Guards in Russia. He further notes that IRGC ideological and political outlook is anchored in three principles. First, the centrality of Islam. Second, belief in the velayat-i faqih, or the view of clerics as an honored class, the clerical elitism. And third, the perpetual struggle between good and evil. So, the velayat-i faqih, or the honored clerical class, that's the same thing as the high fucking rabbis that all those Talmudic arguments are about. It may not be a Talmudic argument where it's completely batshit crazy, but I promise you it's probably a more sophisticated operation at this point because of its Abrahamic roots. Overall, IRGC consists of an estimated 125,000 members across its various divisions. Most members of the Sepah appear to be drawn from the urban lower and middle classes. Employees of the Sepah, according to the Banharyeha, are typically required to be between the ages of 16 and 40. Recruitment into the organization is also made flexible by its ability to incorporate both civilian and military personnel. Gotcha, okay. So yeah, how's their recruitment process work? Because anyway, in addition to its more conventional military branches, the IRGC Land Forces, the IRGC Air Force, and the IRGC Naval Force, the organization houses Iran's principal unconventional warfare, covert operations, and intelligence units. These include the Quds Force, the Basij, the IRGC Intelligence Organization, formerly the IRGC Intelligence Branch. The paramilitary Quds Force notably conducts military operations abroad, IRGC missions. Initially, RGC aim was to safeguard the Islamic Revolution, Iran advocate expansion. Over time, however, its interests broadened to include economic, social, cultural, and political spheres, inevitably turning it into a political actor that views developments in Iran through the prism of its ideology. IRGC domestic operations focus on internal security and the suppression of dissent. Right. So the domestic operations is my point, right? That's my point. In practice, it protects critical centers in the country and guards ministries and government departments. The guards also play an ideological training role by pursuing cultural activities aimed at spreading revolutionary culture and Islamization of society. All right, so now in America, that would be something that is akin to our First and Second Amendment rights, except you also are to conduct yourself in respect to other people's First and Second Amendment rights, meaning the guy that you have to argue with over the most dire of circumstances, you must hold your wrath from violence. Because we live in a society. And everyone around you in the society would like it if you two at least had a distant peace with each other because we like both of you for different reasons, except for this reason of you killing each other. Right? And our tolerance of the IRGC has been predicated, I think, upon this over 47 years. Lying to ourselves about what it was. But most importantly, lying to ourselves about how our blind behavior made bitter enemies out of people in this particular regard. Because if you're IRGC, you don't love America the way these people low key or even high key love America. And I think it serves the IRGC very well to show you all these people that love you. It's just like, why would you bomb the IRGC? You'd hurt all these people that love you. And they will hate you. They'll never forgive you. It's either that or maybe they're hostages that can't say. And they love you because they're hoping one day you'll come to your fucking senses and bomb their tyrants to smithereens because the Shah would not protect them or allow them to defend themselves. Right? I'm telling the lion in the sun right now. When this war is over, my continued support depends on whether you guys got gun rights. People better have guns amongst your common folk in a respectful, civil, orderly manner. But you definitely are free to have them as good and free people in your country doing good and free business with everyone else, right? By what I would hope would be the best of national capitalism on display, raising the living standards for millions of people. I don't know if the majority of them follow Islam, but the majority of them are not in agreement with the Ayatollah's ideology. And I think that makes a big difference. RGC has also taken on significant role in internet surveillance and censorship in recent years. It controls Iran's leading internet service provider. The IRGC has also launched its own official website, Gerdab, which it uses to track the activities of suspected dissenters and to post public denouncements of them, notes Banorthieha. In the realm of foreign affairs, its operations are usually directed at the U.S. and its allies in the Middle East, particularly Israel and Saudi Arabia. IRGC has consistently supported foreign armed groups that further Iranian interests in the Middle East and beyond. After the 1982 Israeli invasion of Lebanon, for instance, the Quds Force played an integral role in the creation and development of Hezbollah. Moreover, during the U.S. invasion and occupation of Iraq, it supplied Shia insurgent groups, and in some cases even Sunni insurgents, with training and material to conduct a proxy war against the U.S. and its coalition partners. Right, and that's where Soleimani comes into play. How's it going, Tara Jackson? And why are we giving the right to bear arms to protect ourselves from a tyrannical government? What's up? You were answering your own question, I think. I wasn't sure what you were... it's... Yes? Anyway. And if you're an Iranian in the chat room listening right now, and you are not afraid to speak, say hi. I bestow privacy and protection upon you. All right. Okay. Ideological indoctrination, military training, and financial support for various Islamic movements, particularly Shia militias in the region, are also among its roles. Right. Growing power. Today, IRGC is gradually institutionalized and turned into an influential actor in Iranian politics. The homogenization of IRGC ranks in terms of political outlook, growing bureaucratization, and relatively autonomous structure of the organization has increased the sense of corporateness among IRGC ranks. Right, you see, like, the IRGC it's come in, it's a big bureaucracy, it's more communism. It's like socialist Cuba having its little hierarchy people, right? It's not attacking capitalism. It may not even be leeching. It may not even be having a negative impact economically on them, but I'm pretty sure that there's a whole lot of brutal suppression of a lot of things going on. Especially people that are afraid of... on one hand, there's people that are afraid of Zionists, and then on the other hand, there's people that are afraid of Zoroastrians and the traditionalists. Tara says, I worked for Arabs my entire life from different countries. Anime experience. They're all really super nice, laugh out loud. I even had a Palestinian send me my ex-husband to Hawaii with them, for example. Anime was a typo. Oh, okay. Different country. Well, it was a typo for what? What did you... different countries and? Did you mean and experiences? Well, anyway, because I did think that was like, what the hell does anime have to do with anything? I worked for Arabs my entire life from different countries and experiences. They're all really super nice. Yeah, right. And I know that, like, dude, like, people are super kind everywhere, right? It's just like in these United States, you get like these real, like, kind of like bully pulpit fundamentalist types, you know, like, you know, you've got the real harsh rhetoric Democratic socialists in Congress. You got the really harsh rhetoric fundamentalist conservatives in Congress, right? Their rhetoric is deeply rooted in the highest spectacles of the political discourse in this nation, right? And so that which feeds the radicals of your nation is a leaning and leading influence politically on what you are and what you are doing. And if these guys are hopped up on some sort of fucking religious fervor because of how the spirit they call their God makes them feel under certain events arising, you know, they're gonna do all sorts of crazy shit. Right, and so Iranians and Arabs are different kinds of people. So anyway, but, you know, Islam is unfortunately a universal religion. People don't understand white people of white culture who are Muslims, but they do exist. Today, and I mean like actual like white people that converted, not a fucking Caucasoid who would fucking racially consider themselves Jewish who converted, right? So anyway, IRGC has gradually institutionalized and turned into an influential actor in Iranian politics. To homogenize IRGC ranks in terms of political outlook, growing bureaucratic I'm sorry, did I read that already? But yeah, but yeah, the growing bureaucracy. It's just like it wants to control life. Uh, I think it starts off as the threats. It's the same problem with like the Cuban Revolution and the Venezuelan socialist reforms and all that stuff. It's just like you wanted to cast off the quote colonialism, but you didn't realize that you can still be personally profiteering in a non abusive, exploitative manner. America does it all the fucking time amongst the people who have good moral and ethical business practices, which most Americans like to see, which is why they fucking hide it so hard. Anyway, for Benherjea, the IRGC's growing power is the result of several factors: a coordinated effort with Khamenei to purge and weaken the Ministry of Intelligence of Iran, or MOIS, while consolidating power. Okay, so to weaken the Ministry of Intelligence of Iran. So, IRGC just doesn't want it wants to overcome this government, right? It's really wild because I mean Iranians don't even talk about their government, I don't think. They talk about these guys whom the Constitution has given special authority, right? I mean, like, being at war with the IRGC is like technically not even being at war with the government of Iran. This entire war, I've noticed something. Trump hasn't attacked the president of Iran. He hasn't, so isn't that kind of surrealistically weird? Because the president can't be president unless he goes to the supreme leader. Now, my assumption is that there's a lot of conditioning and you're not going to go against that guy. You're probably going to be a low-key loyalist. So you'd be going through an election. All it means is that Iran would just have an election. Iran has elections. But you're not allowed to... But your president doesn't fucking matter because the Ayatollah. Right? I mean, even I thought Ahmadinejad was kind of an interesting fellow. Perhaps he was just a plant to make Obama look good, because he was kind of like the Persian Obama, right? Anyway. Yet there are significant challenges to the IRGC's current position, including internal dissent. Consequently, notes Benherjea, the fate of the IRGC is linked with the fate of the Iranian theocracy. The two forces have formed a symbiotic relationship that keeps the current system in place. But if that system is threatened, the IRGC leadership will have to adapt to a rapidly evolving environment to preserve its position of dominance. Okay, so I'm going to ask the question real quick. How many IRGC clerics are left in Iran? All right. Let's see. Leader on February 28th. Oh, February 20th. Okay, oh yeah, so it's April 3rd. Wow, this war's been going on for over a month. Man, it's felt like 2 weeks. Whoo, holy shit. Wow, a month of this fucking war going on. Dear fucking God. I don't think anybody knows how many of these clerics are alive. I mean, I could have sworn they got all of them, right? The question is, if there's supposed to be about 125,000 of just the IRGC, um, all right, one more question. All right. How many Iranian state military has been destroyed? Or surprise airstrike, Supreme Leader on command, officials, civilian casualties, respond. One second. This is kind of just like on a side note of me trying to, because United Arab, yeah, okay, yeah, that's by country, but that's Iran as a whole. I want to know how many targets were not IRGC. Aircraft losses by country, naval, because like I'd imagine the whole military is involved, but the ground troops situation is very interesting, right? And what does our intelligence know about their regular military? The ones that are going to be made up of not the jihadi population. All right. So we're going to do this one next, but I think we need more Iranian music. So I think we need a little break for me. And there'll be a 20-minute video after I read the next one. So we won't need a break after this article, because listening to the documentary will be my break. Let's see. I have to make sure that they're actually giving me. Let's see. I'm going to roll the dice with this, maybe. Album, are they Iranian? It says Berlin, Germany, Iran. That kind of tells me that they're probably Iranian exile. Well, we're going to go with it. We're going to go with it. So these guys look underground as hell. This is Nashmeh Dunzaka. It's from 2015. And what's going to be a song? Oh, these people didn't know how to do this right. Oh, this guy didn't do the timestamps correctly. You dummy. You friggin' dummy. Did somebody in the comment section do the time? You know, when they type in the timestamp and they literally just give you, there's no comments on this video, of course, but they don't give you the fucking, okay, the first track is 2 minutes and 53 seconds, but then it goes on for 8 minutes. So, okay, we're going to go to 2:53 then. And then we're going to do Griefen Aufstieg or something. That's what we're doing. Is this going to sound like shit? This might sound like shit. Okay, hang on here. All right, bear with me a second. Let me get to the end of that. All right, we'll see how this goes. I may abort this. think this... Did the song actually just end? Or is it just a long outro? I was going to let it bed for a second, because it's like... I think it's like an 8.5 minute long song. And it's the kind of... It's kind of got... It's a neat thing, because it kind of like follows this whole wild piano bit. Anyway. Yeah, this was very, very... Like, I found some obscure underground shit for you. That's some obscure... Like, here. These guys are definitely going for that look. Alright, So here we are. I'm gonna go to explaininghistory.org. I like how this is laid out over here. You got the outline. This is gonna... when I was going over this is gonna bring up a lot of stuff that people aren't contextually talking about. Welcome to your central resource for the understanding the Iranian Revolution of 1979, a seismic event that not only reshaped Iran, but also sent shockwaves across the Middle East and the wider world. That's good enough of that. The revolution marked the end of a 2,500-year-old monarchy and the rebirth of a unique and enduring Islamic republic. All right, so 2,500-year-old monarchy, right? Meaning, like, whether it was a Muslim nation or not, it was the same bloodline in charge for a little bit longer than Christianity. Like, perhaps as long, as old as the Roman fucking Empire, one could say, or the Roman Republic even. And, let's not fucking talk about how the Eastern Orthodoxy might have had a fucking healthy relationship with Iran, perhaps. This page serves as your starting point. A helpful guide to navigate the deep-seated causes, the tumultuous course, and the complex and contested legacy of this transformative period. Below, you will find a curated selection of articles from our blog, each offering a unique lens through which to explore this critical chapter in modern history. We invite you to delve in and equip yourself with the knowledge to understand the forces that continue to shape Iran in its relationship with the world today. So, the unforeseen upheaval and introduction. The Iranian Revolution was a multifaceted movement that brought together a diverse coalition of Iranians, from secular intellectuals and students to bazaar merchants, and most decisively the Shia clergy, to overthrow the US-backed monarchy of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. Now, as you can see, like, the clergy is kind of like the whole shebang ultimately, though. Right? I mean, look at what they just said that this all was. Like you don't have any... Like that list did not involve military people. Now, you somehow had secular intellectuals. And then all sorts of people that were in business and students... They all got into this, right? I bet you $1 million it was sold under anti-colonialism drivel, right? Not that I am pro-colonial. I'm anti-colonial myself, which means you don't have globalism. because globalism means that all nations become colonial. Right? Just because you may have tribal consciousness does not mean you dismiss national consciousness. Many families make up a tribe. Many tribes make up a nation. And then many nations make up your world. All right. It was a period of intense social and political turmoil, beginning with widespread demonstrations in January 1978, culminating in the establishment of the Islamic Republic in December of 79. Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, as its supreme leader, the revolution was fueled by a potent mix of grievances, including resentment against the Shah's autocratic rule, his close ties to the United States, growing social and economic inequity, and conservative backlash against his aggressive secularizing and westernizing policies. The Iranian Revolution Origins, Course, and Legacy. This article provides a comprehensive overview of the revolution from its deep historical roots to its lasting impact on Iran and the global political landscape. Seeds of Revolution, Decades of Discontent. So this is where I needed the article to go. Oh, it didn't just happen overnight, right? It gets into the creep up of issues. The creep up of issues is the grievances of that world. We are in Trump's world due to certain very particular grievances, both against not only our political adversaries, but also former political alliances, as there's a great deal of Republicans who did not represent the Republican platform very well, right? And Trump is serving the Republican platform, and everybody looks at his presidency one way or the other, but just remember, doctrinally speaking, your party is speaking from platform. So argue the platform, because the policies are being leaned on in an admixture of political platform and how the representative of those ideals is reacting to reality in the world, or bullshit you're willing to accept. And for whatever reasons, you're being told truths and lies. The original sin of the 53 coup. For many Iranians, the original sin of the Pahlavi dynasty relationship with the West was the 53 coup, in an operation orchestrated by the CIA and British intelligence. The democratically elected Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, was overthrown after the nationalized Iran's oil industry, which had been under British control. The coup restored the Shah to power, but it left a deep and lasting legacy of resentment against foreign interference and cemented the view of the Shah as a puppet of the West. Now, all of that could have been absolutely true, but a puppet of the West, you then have to look at the results, right? So we'll have to look at the question of what was wrong with the Shah's policies, right? We can also argue how he implemented his policies versus the policies themselves. This event became a rallying cry for anti-imperialist sentiment that would fuel the revolutionary movement a quarter century later. The 53 coup, oil, Mossadegh, the roots of Iranian resentment. Delve into the Anglo-American operation that crushed a democratic experiment in Iran and set the stage for decades of autocracy and anti-Western anger. The White Revolution, modernization, and its discontents. In 1963, the Shah launched the White Revolution, a far-reaching series of top-down reforms aimed at modernizing Iran. The program included land reform, women's suffrage, and the establishment of literacy corps. Okay, I could see where a conservative would flip his fucking lid. While these reforms led to some economic and social progress, they were implemented in an authoritarian manner. What the fuck does that mean? And ultimately backfired. What does it mean, authoritarian manner? That's kind of where I think the issue goes. And it's tearing down the entire way your society works because one thing had a deadly result. Right? But let me not speak ignorantly. Because if this was one thing that went on for fucking almost 20 fucking years, because maybe everything was redeemable up until this point. However, this point was probably part of the plan in the short term. If you succeed on this timetable, by this timetable, you will implement these measures for our future timetables. And then it's just a question of how many globalists were interested in the thing, and how that plays out with the interests of the communists versus the interests of the capitalist diaspora, one could say. Diaspora is kind of like a word at this point for various things, right? It's a good word for other things. It doesn't have to always be the Jewish. Anyway, the land reforms displaced many peasants who then migrated to overcrowded cities. While the secularizing aspects of the programs, such as granting women the right to vote, deeply antagonized the powerful Shia clergy. Right. Are we forgetting that women don't vote in Iran? Right? So, when conservatives make chauvinistic humor, we're kidding, you know? We do want you ladies to have your rightful, natural place across all spectrums of things. Because the genders are working together as a two-part team. And if you're going to be a democracy, you gotta vote together. The White Revolution, intended to preempt a red communist revolution, instead helped pave the way for a green Islamic one. So that's also very interesting, is this idea that it was meant to get ahead of a communist revolution. However, it's very weird the way that works, right? So there's no way that the IRGC functions without socialism, though, right? Because it needs to fucking parasite off of the government's taxes to operate, and it needs to have the spiritual legitimacy to operate. The White Revolution, Modernization, Reform, and Resistance. This piece explores the Shah's ambitious reform program and how its unintended consequences fueled opposition from both the clergy and the rural population. All right. Architects and engines of revolution. The Iranian Revolution was a broad-based movement, but it was the unique alliance between the traditional merchant class of the bazaar and the Shia clergy that provided the ideological and financial backbone of the opposition. All right. So you have like a MAGA-style trendy movement that gets people into conservative values, and they become sympathetic magicians unconsciously, or, well, in this case, very consciously, without consciously knowing that it's magic. They just think it's like an answer to prayer or something. Right? Because remember, you're saying secular, not atheist. Secular may also include a lot of Zoroastrians. Because Zoroastrians, like pagans, are kind of the exact same thing as a, quote, secularist. Because we all typically agree that any public use of your, quote, faith ought to be as a personal reflection, right? If, say, you're doing like a whole speech, say I'm doing a speech, and I'll just talk about things in association personally, in my personal heart character, how my relationship with Thor informs my worldview, in the course of talking about something that is secular. All right. So the undisputed architect of theocratic revolution was Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, an outspoken critic of the Shah since the early 60s. Khomeini was arrested and exiled in 1964. From his exile, primarily in Najaf, Iraq, he developed his theory of the Vilayat-e-Faqih, or the guardianship of the jurist, which provided the ideological justification for clerical rule. His smuggled sermons and writings galvanized a growing number of Iranians who came to see him as the incorruptible leader of the opposition of tyrannical and un-Islamic regime. So you can kind of see how this works, right? And naturally, he's kind of doing a Prophet Muhammad thing, kind of like he's writing his memoirs from a cave, in hiding. And this would explain why the ISIS situation in Iraq, like this explains how Shia Islam has its place in Iraq and can be influenced psychologically speaking. This guy understood Iraqi Shia Islam intimately, thus able to get subversive support within Iraq. That all makes sense to me. That seems to have fallen off of the proper rational international conversation about the region in context to what all this religious fervor means, right? We don't get into the weeds of what they're really fucking saying to realize whether they're rational fucking human beings or not. Okay, so Ayatollah Khomeini, the architect theory. Okay, I think that's a link about the Ayatollah himself. So, the pillars of opposition, the bazaar and the clergy. So the alliance between the bazaar, the traditional marketplaces that formed the heart of Iran's urban economics, and the clergy was a formidable force. The Bazaris, whose economic interests and traditional way of life were threatened by the Shah's modernization policies. But that's fucking ironic because Iran is modern in many respects. Provided the financial resources and organizational networks for the revolutionary movement. In return, the clergy, led by Khomeini, provided the moral authority and ideological leadership that mobilized the masses. Right? So, the Bazaris wanted to have a certain kind of control of the economic shift of Iran. And I'd imagine that they probably within Iranian politics probably just figured it out, and the Bazaris were happy with the thing, and they could have modernization and Bazaris. Maybe, I'm assuming. I don't know how the history goes, right? That's why we're learning this, right? All I know is that no government should have the kind of personal indiscretion in your life, in your body, in your person, as the way the IRGC has made the government of Iran, or has forced the government of Iran to allow them to do. Because this is a whole militia. This is a militia holding a military hostage. That's basically the story. It's kind of weird. And it probably has a lot to do with all those guys maybe feeling abandoned, especially if they feel personally they have these nationalist interests. They may not know what to do about firing on their own people, because everybody in the IRGC is like their own people, but also trained really well. Anyway, this potent combination of economic power and religious ideology proved to be the undoing of the Pahlavi state. The Bazaar and the Clergy, the Socioeconomic Ideology Foundation of Anti-Pahlavi Opposition. Alright, so that's another link. Instruments of Fear, Savak. The Shah's regime was notoriously repressive, and its primary instrument of control was the Savak, the country's secret police, established in 1957. Okay. With the help of the CIA and Israeli intelligence. All right, so we're going to see how that goes, right? This is the sins of the past, okay? This is the sins of the past. We're talking about what was wrong of us to do. Unless, of course, these were not bad people, but it was bad people who got hit by it. That could also be a thing. It's hard to say that because you're talking about, oh, there's such a thing as bad people. I mean, if there's no such thing as bad people, then we're wasting our time with the Epstein files, aren't we? But the Epstein files exist, so let's know for sure that there are bad people that deserve to be bombed to hell. And it's not always the people in the Epstein files. And bombing them to hell is not the way you handle the people in the Epstein files. So the Savak became the symbol of the Shah's tyranny. Its extensive network of informants and its brutal methods of surveillance, torture, and execution created a climate of fear that alienated and enraged the Iranian people. Now, that's apparently what the IRGC is doing. And I've seen a little bit of footage of this. But I'm still figuring out what sources I should waste my time looking at, because there's a lot of fucking stuff that doesn't have answers. I'll put it to you that way. Ultimately fueling their determination to overthrow the regime. Savak and the mechanisms of authoritarian consolidation in Pahlavi's Iran from 57 to 79. So you could basically see the revolution as Savak versus IRGC. That's what I think you're looking at here, right? And so the secret police, no doubt, would have bred all sorts of conspiracy theories. And here it is, something that was established by CIA and Mossad together. And here's the CIA and the Mossad doing this war again. But has America changed? Not that are there people we can trust in there now, but has America actually changed on levels that we're not factoring, that we can't factor, because it transcends what the rational mind in its conspiracy theory monkey brain fucking understands. And this is going to be a lesson of Neptune conjunct Saturn in Aries. Ain't it now? So the veiled agents of change, women in the revolution, from all walks of life, played a crucial and active role in the revolution, participating in mass demonstrations and underground resistance efforts. For many, the revolution was an opportunity to challenge not only the political oppression of the Shah, but also traditional gender roles. Because, by the way, what if this interim prince you want to put in, what if because, like, the question is, like, I'm sure he must have given you assurances that he is not interested in instituting a new Savak. That would be my assumption, that you trust him not to make another Savak. However, the legacy of the revolution for women is a contested one. While they were instrumental in its success, the establishment of the Islamic Republic saw the imposition of new restrictions on the rights and freedoms. Right. Because like right now in America, there's a lot of conservatism rising, right? And a lot of women wanting to uphold and men elevating the upholdment of more modest women. Right? And there's a balance. Because, we somehow twerked our way through the apocalypse. How the fuck did we do that? The world was coming to an end, and the best thing we could think to do was to have our black women rub their labias on the asphalt. That was a real thing that happened in 2020. That's a real cultivation of Black Lives Matter. Right? These were our revolutionaries. Right? So, you gotta have your militias, but fundamentalists are going to be the most enthusiastic about militarizing because of how they feel about their position in the world and their position in God's kingdom. So, let me take a look. So the aftershocks, diplomacy crisis, U.S. Embassy hostage crisis, all this stuff, we kind of get this at this point, right? And then there's everything to be assumed and everything that we know, because there's a lot of free speech that you don't have over there. All right. Let's take a look at this real fast. Does it load? Ho ho ho! It's blocked? Really? What's that? What's that doing? Oh. Oh, okay, I see. Okay, let me turn off this feature. How do I turn this off? Okay, there we go. All right. So, okay, so I can't click on the Veiled Agency of Women. That's annoying. Or the Savak. Okay. Okay, so before we jump on this, let me see, Iran, Savak. What kind of source? Maybe this will do it. Okay. All right, so here's just a Savak article in Explaining History, which I wish was just linked. This was written September 3rd of last year. All right. The study of modern authoritarian regimes invariably necessitates an examination of their internal security apparatuses. In the case of Iran under Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, 41 to 79, the Organization of National Intelligence and Security, SAVAK, served as the linchpin of the state's coercive architecture. His historiography of the late Pahlavi's period often treats SAVAK as a synonym for brutality, a narrative cemented by revolutionary discourse and victim testimonies. While accurate in describing its methods, this characterization can obscure a fuller academic understanding of SAVAK as a complex institution born from specific Cold War exigencies and a particular logic of governance. This article seeks to analyze SAVAK through a scholarly lens that moves beyond its mythological status. It will posit that SAVAK was a product of two intersecting forces: the Shah's personal insecurity following the 1953 coup, and the strategic priorities of the United States during the Cold War. Furthermore, it will demonstrate how the agency's operational methods, its structure, its use of torture, psychological warfare, right, examining collapse and adoption of its core functions. Right. Let's see. I'm running over some, so I want to see if we can get into some specifics. Origins, founding the Cold War context. 6 irreparably. Scholars such as the market have SAVAK's creation was collaborative and stay the American patrons. On television, second degree. Assad provided foundational training, organization model, and technical equipment for the new agency. This foreign tutelage. Organizational structure, operational mandate. SAVAK was designed to be a comprehensive instrument of control. Its estimated size, debated by scholars, be about 5,000 core officers and a vast network of tens of thousands of informants. Okay, so tens of thousands of informants, but only 5,000 officers. So the IRGC probably outnumbered them hardcore, and it's just a question of how they seized control. Allowed for an unprecedented penetration of Iranian society. The organization was divided into directorates with specialized functions. Directorate 3, responsible for internal security. Directorate, then it goes to 5. Where's 4? Where's 1 and 2 for that matter? 5, tasked with censorship of all media, including print, film, academic publications, international operations focused on surveillance. All right, so it was tasked with censorship of all media. Okay, wow, yeah, that's pretty wild. And so, like this is like the Red Scare, fooling you into taking away your rights, right? So this was a adverse reaction to communism, right? And at the very least, even if there wasn't this foreign influence, it might have been that the Shah had to work with Israel and Iran because they were the only ones willing to work with them to ward off communism, but it was going to come anyway, and this was not working, and everybody didn't like the 1953 coup. And the whole 9 yards, and so this Green Revolution happens. The agency's effectiveness stemmed from its omniscient presence, as documented in the works of the Ervand Abrahimi in 1999. Informants were embedded in virtually every public... Right. So, you would see how a theocracy would rise out of this, because here's this grand conspiracy, and that censorship may be getting interpreted in different kinds of ways because of different manners in which the communist of your own people is interested in doing the thing, right? Just like you can find all sorts of like old Soviet film stuff that has a lot of really intelligent work behind it. That shows you stuff that they were learning that we figured out later on in a different kind of context. So anyway, this created a state of perpetual suspicion, effectively achieving what political theorists term the atomization of society. So you would, like, a cult that knew how to vet you in loyalty terms against, to be certain that you were not Savak, or you did not like the Savak, or you were not an informant of the Savak. You would have this really heavy-duty thing going on, worried about CIA, Mossad infiltration into the group. Trust in making any collective political action inherently risky. Savak preemptively stifled dissent not only through force, but through psychological manipulation. The popular maxim, Savak hamea hast, or Savak is everywhere, was a testament to the success of this strategy in fostering a climate of fear. Oh, that's very interesting that that's the slogan, because that's the slogan of the rebellion in Star Wars Andor. We have friends everywhere. Methodology of repression. Torture as a tool of state policy. The most notorious aspect of the Savak operation was its institutionalized use of torture. It is critical to analyze this not as sadistic excess, but as calculated instrument of state policy. Calculated, but how widespread was it? Like, was it like a dozen people out of 1 million? Who may have been legitimately tied to forces trying to undermine a 2,500-year-old bloodline that may be corrupt and ruthless, but on a national consciousness level is a part of the people and cares, has a stake in it. Interrogation was designed for two primary purposes: to extract intelligence and confessions, and to serve as deterrence by breaking the individual and demonstrating the state's absolute power. Right, and here's also the thing. Everybody's been doing that since the institution of government was incepted. And government was not always the way our structure was organized. But we did have an organizing structure. We just don't quite understand it yet or even have a name for it. We have a description of it that we are reducing, but we don't have a name for it or their name for it. They being the, basically the pre-Sumerian animist world. Pre-religious animist world. I'm trying not to literally put everything on Sumeria's shoulders, but I am also trying to discriminate from men of the North because, we were living in... We were living like Native Americans for a fucking long-ass time, okay? Because we came out of the Ice Age, whereas these guys preceded the Ice Age. That's all Bach Saga stuff. And also, like, in a way that is not of disrespect, it's also, there's also a lot about Aryans, and what an Aryan is, and Aryanism, and what an Aryan is to Iran, that is not fully understood, because it's not like... It's something a little bit more defined. It's more like a bloodline than it is like a race. But I can't really explain that right now. Post-revolutionary tribunal records, scholars like Abrahamian have cataloged a system of scientific torture techniques were systematic designed for maximum psychological and physical impact. These included the falaka, the bastinado, administration of electric shocks, prolonged solitary confinement in specially designed hot or cold cells, sexual violence, and mock executions. Jesus. The targets of this repression were ideologically diverse, encompassing Marxists from the Tuda Party and Fedayeen Ikalk, members of the religious socialist Mujahideen Akalk, secular nationalists, and intellectuals. This lack of discrimination underscored the regime's view of all dissent as a monolith threat. Paradoxically, the shared experience of Savak's prisons created a common narrative of oppression among otherwise divergent opposition groups, forging a solidarity that would later prove crucial during the revolutionary upheaval. Now listen, people of Iran, I am deeply sorry for what my forefathers here helped this Shah do to you in 1978, 1979, right? I wasn't even born then. Mom and Dad were still dating when you guys fucking started this party, okay? So, my question is, do we put the blame of wrongdoing responsibly placed? Right? So there's probably a lot to be said about the operations of the CIA and the Mossad in the process of instituting Savak, right? We didn't get a whole lot of details of precisely what moves they made with the Shah to set this up and where they got the people to do it from. The scholarship on Savak's presents several interpretive frameworks. The instrumentalist thesis Gasirowski represents this view, framing Savak primarily as a Cold War construct. Its form, function, and technical capabilities are seen as direct extensions of American foreign policy objectives, making it an instrument of the Shah's external allies. The social history approach, Abrahamian's work, focuses on the lived experience of repression in Tortured Confessions. He analyzes Savak not as a monolithic entity, but as a bureaucracy of violence, with interrogators following procedures and filing reports, thus normalizing terror within an administrative framework. Right, and the IRGC foot soldiers that do internal security have become that. Because they don't want to do open trade with the West or with America. Like what is, like, does Europe have something to gain from its relationship with Iran as it is? The people are just rhetoric drunk. It's really weird. I guess it's all part of the plan, I suppose. Right? Look, I'll put it to you this way, man. If some fucking crazy thing in the world is going to fall, some system, some way of life that we've known is going to fall. I really knew what I was saying there. It's a tough game. It's a very tough game. But it's I would hope that it's only the system that doesn't serve us. The one that serves them. Does it fall? Does it fall despite what seems to be the forces in power trying to hold it up? Is it going to be as catastrophic for life on Earth as we think it's going to be when it happens? Do the supply chains still bring what is produced? Okay, Cold War Instrument Agency's evolution, seemingly autonomous center of power by the 1970s, acting with impunity, supports the argument that it had begun to shape the political environment it was meant to control, ultimately constraining the Shah's options and alienating the populace beyond repair. Right. So, at the end of the day, you do not want to repeat Savak, and there's a deep understanding of that just because you're still dealing with that because of the IRGC, right? It all just got re-rationalized. And I believe that the Line in the Sun movement understands that now, which is why they're going in the direction that they're going, right? I would recommend they don't do the parliamentary system. I recommend they do the republic system with the separation of powers. Between that and gun rights and all the other little Americanized model of things you want to do, you'll do just fine. And you will be harder to control with your separation of powers. Excuse me. All right. The logical pressure swiftly established its own intelligence apparatus, first Savama and later the Ministry of Intelligence, or MOIS. So Savama / MOIS is what Savak became, effectively, which makes all sense. So anyway. Because it would seem to me that there would have to be a lot more I would need to understand about that time period. But that's also why we're going to move on to the next thing in our fair use cavalcade, which is this. I'm going to put this at 1.5 speed. I do not know if this is going to give me any playback problems. We'll see how it goes.
The United States helped the Iranian monarch, the Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, in a coup against the pro-parliamentary faction. From then on, the country becomes a key ally in American Cold War strategy. U.S. aid, technical assistance, and weapons flow in, while the Shah tries to modernize Iranian society and develop relations with the West. Shah Pahlavi encourages other countries in the Middle East to do the same, although Saudi Arabia's King Faisal warns him. Your Majesty, I appreciate your advice. May I remind you, you are not the Shah of France. You are not in the Élysée. You are in Iran. Your population is 90% Muslim. Please, don't forget that. In 1963, the Shah launches the so-called White Revolution, a land reform program including education, women's rights, and urbanization. Oil sales fund the program, and they soar by 670% after Iran refuses to join the Arab oil embargo following the 1973 Arab-Israeli War. By late 1975, literacy rates have doubled to 32%, forming a growing middle class of salaried workers and small business-owning families. Women can vote, and officials develop more secular forms of law. But
so if they're a 90% Muslim country, like, how did they end up with less freedom, right? So like this is like probably a kind of moderate Islam that you don't fully understand, right? Just like we don't, like today we hardly think of moderate Christianity because Christianity's been so fucking pushed one way or the other.
Iran is not a democracy.
But I think that we have just taken what is good for this country. And I even sometimes wonder if this multi-party system is good for those who have it elsewhere. But for us, it seems that what we have done now is the best because, as I said, just go in the streets and question anybody. You will see the whole country has joined the movement.
Scribe makes step-by-step guides for any process with AI.
Positioning himself as a paternal figure. He centralizes power by appointing loyal but usually indecisive ministers and outlawing political parties. In 1975, all adult men must join the Shah's Rastakhi's party, while Iran's secret police, the Savak, suppress underground parties like the National Front and the Communist Today. While the White Revolution benefits secular urbanites, others resist it. Rapid modernization brings inflation, corruption, income inequality, social tensions, and inefficiency. As rural workers move to cities for better pay, many discover that they've rarely benefited from the Shah's policies. One villager from Aliabad complains, "We have nothing in this country. We see that others are rich and have 7- or 8-story homes, and we live in tents. It takes us 1 or 2 months to get something done in government offices, and the other side had good connections and is able to ruin us. If they attack us and fight us and we go to court, the court does nothing because they are in cahoots with them." Officials reinvest much of Iran's oil income back into industry or the military, but little of Iran's 1972 to 74 oil boom goes to the countryside. The Shah's reforms split Iranian society into distinct groups, and as unemployment and corruption increase following a crash in oil prices in 1975, some begin to oppose his central rule. Leftist intellectuals opposing royal absolutism and US interference joined the National Front, or Today, while more radical leftists joined the Marxist-Leninist Fedayin-e-Khalq or the Islamic Marxist Mujahideen-e-Khalq. Both militant organizations conduct small-scale attacks and assassinations. Other Iranian intellectuals remain independent of major organizations, partly to avoid Savak's attention. The most influential opponents are religious clerics. Many oppose the White Revolution's secularism, as well as corruption, foreign influence, and the Shah's central power. As religious figures, they also partly escape Savak's repressions and combine political messages into sermons. The most notable anti-Shah cleric is Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. Since the early 1960s, he's openly opposed the Shah, who exiles the Ayatollah to Iraq. Described as a revolutionary traditionalist, Khomeini claims democratic republican ideals within an Islamic context. These appeal to young rural men from traditional backgrounds who now have formal education and work in cities. Those who are out in society more and go into Shiraz are for Khomeini, but the old men who haven't studied and don't go into the city much aren't. There's a difference between those whose level of thinking is lower, who are illiterate and haven't seen much of the situation, and those whose level of thinking is higher. Khomeini also benefits from clerics' historical role as leaders of popular resistance movements. By early 1978, economic crisis and political agitation lead to protests. When security forces react and kill some protesters, the funerals draw huge crowds. The Shah seems genuinely surprised by events which are spontaneous and contradict his self-perception as a beloved figure. The US is also surprised. They lack information about Iran or Khomeini and consider the Shah's position stable. In August, riots erupt in major cities, coupled with attacks on symbols of modernization and foreign influence. On August 19th, Islamic extremists set fire to the Cinema Rex, killing up to 470 people. But many Iranians believe the hated Savak is responsible. Clashes between protesters and security forces soon multiply, especially at mosques and colleges. Student Mohammed Amini struggles with police at a teacher's college. The police took...
So you see right there, you're now entering a period of time where the turmoil is making it not clear whether it's the Savak or it's revolutionaries, right? So people are going, during times like that, people end up believing what makes sense to them, what they want to believe based on how their world has been informed.
Took up positions and attacked us. We fought them with our rocks. A violent struggle broke out, but we weren't an equal match for them. We were forced to retreat. When we went back into the college yard, I noticed the dean was watching from his window and laughing. At that very moment, a student threw a rock at him. The window shattered. The Shah orders the military not to use significant force, but the response is uneven. Some ministers encourage the Shah to make reforms, including legalizing political opposition and adopting the Islamic calendar. Pahlavi also appoints new Prime Minister Jafar Sharif Imami to oversee a government of reconciliation. But the reforms satisfy few opponents, and released political prisoners join and lead opposition groups. On September 7th, the Shah orders martial law, which bans public gatherings and imposes a curfew. The next day, protesters, many of whom have likely not yet heard the martial law announcement, gather in Jaleh Square, where government troops fire on them. They kill 68 and wound 205, but some opposition sources claim up to 5,000 casualties. The event, known as Black Friday, causes confusion amongst the authorities, as both ministers and local commanders hesitate to apply martial law. There's also fraternization between protesters and troops. Most soldiers are conscripts from rural areas and are receptive to opposition clerics' religious messages of solidarity or threats to excommunicate soldiers. Most of the army stays loyal, but chief of the...
So my question is, was it going to end up being a matter that, because if the United States kind of did this really, really on the down low with the Mossad, meaning that it really didn't have anybody else's explicit approval. Although I'd imagine maybe the British Crown was let in on it or something. Considering where their global alliances have gone, was there supposed to be a deliberate setup to failure to make, but it was supposed to go where, was the Ayatollah not supposed to take that revolution? It was supposed to be a red revolution, like they said. And this, so like at the time, it's kind of like looking at like a MAGA movement that went too far, right? That's one way of looking at it. And it happened based on this setup where you've got a royal family with a superiority complex, not doing a good job being a 20th century leader, where people don't go for this kind of stuff anymore. And the Ayatollah was able to ride that for a long time. 47 years is a long time to creep up to this point. Because remember, it's the same thing with Germany. You know, Germany didn't want to be a police state. It just thought a police state was necessary. And it was the people that thought it was necessary that were the least policed. Because they liked endorsing the whole thing. So they were ultimately above suspicion because they were the standard, like, we're the ones that you can trust by the merit of nationalism, right? Their loyalty is unbounded and all that shit.
The General Staff, General Abbas Karabaghi, is worried and addresses the troops. At this critical point in our history, I want to urge you to maintain discipline, unity, and obedience to command. Be aware of ill-wishers and agitators who wish to split your ranks. It is important not to yield to emotional factors and continue to support the legitimate government.
Imagine being able to build anything. A complete AI.
Throughout late 1978, large protests run parallel with religious marches. Although some ministers advise banning them, the Shah allows them to avoid further enraging protesters. But it doesn't work, and the entire Iranian free media and institutions like the central bank now favor the opposition. The Shah tries to position himself as leader of a revolution against corrupt officials, while simultaneously announcing a new military cabinet in early November. Henry Precht, the US State Department's Iran country director, notes the inconsistency. The Shah was following a bifurcated policy. On the one hand, the regime had shot a lot of people. On the other hand, he tried to appeal to the population by appointing a new prime minister. It was a confusing time if you were not an Iranian. Is he soft or is he hard? In fact, he was both, groping for a solution. The US reaction is muted. Even before the revolution, President Jimmy Carter cooled relations with Iran due to human rights issues, but Iran is still a vital Cold War ally and receives large amounts of sophisticated weapons like F-14 aircraft. Although some US officials want Carter to support the Shah, some State Department figures advise reaching out to Khomeini's entourage, especially Dr. Ebrahim Yazdi, a naturalized US citizen. The inconsistent US response leads the Shah to conclude that they're working with Khomeini against him, which isn't true. So the Shah and his government can't get the unrest under control in 1978, and things soon escalate in 1979. In January, the Shah appoints Prime Minister Shapur Bakhtiar to create a new civilian government. Bakhtiar belongs to the banned National Front, so the Shah hopes the new government will calm the protests. Bakhtiar orders political prisoners released, relaxes censorship and martial law, and suggests disbanding Savak and negotiating with Khomeini. Khomeini refuses, and Bakhtiar concludes the Shah's presence is blocking any deal. He encourages the Shah to leave Iran, even as the military insists the monarch's presence is the only thing maintaining the morale of the army. On January 16th, though, the Shah leaves Iran for Morocco. He says it's for health reasons, which is partly true, as he does have leukemia, though this is not public knowledge yet. Henry Precht suggests the diagnosis does play a role. In retrospect, we know now that he knew he was a sick man, and what he wanted more than anything was to pass on to his son a viable monarchy. He wanted his son to inherit the throne. He was afraid if he slaughtered people in the streets and turned over to a teenager a situation he could not handle, the dynasty would be swept aside. When the Shah leaves, protests grow and soldiers defect en masse, up to 12,000 a day. The Air Force, with many educated technicians, is especially rebellious. Hundreds go on hunger strikes against the closing of Tehran airport, which blocks Khomeini's return to Iran. As protesters clash with demoralized Air Force troops guarding the airport, Bakhtiyar reopens it. On February 1st, Khomeini returns to Tehran from Paris, where he had gone after being expelled from Iraq. About 1 million Iranians take to the streets to welcome him.
Now, you see right there, from where? From Paris, from France. So, he was in Iraq, and then he was in France. And the French have significant influence over the European Union and how the European Union operates with NATO. So are you starting to see, right? There's a manner of something desirable on the global stage. There's something that they like about what the Ayatollah is doing. In the weird way they think things work in the world. People are very blinded by the exotic, right? It's like, hey, listen, I find all sorts of different things in Arab, Iranian cultures and everywhere else in the world very cool, interesting, beautiful, stuff I like to see, stuff that I think they should be proud of. But you let that blind you from the awfulness of people around it. And yeah, what do these people value?
Quickly establishes the Provisional Revolutionary Government and takes over government ministries, including foreign affairs, finance, and justice. Bakhtiyar attempts to incorporate Khomeini's shadow cabinet into his own, but Khomeini doesn't cooperate. On February 11th, loyal Imperial Guard troops clash with rebellious Air Force cadets at Doshan Tepe Air Base. Armed civilians join the cadets and capture a machine gun factory. The Air Force refuses to bomb the facility, forcing a crisis of allegiance for commandos. Many now favor Khomeini, and on February 11th, the army declares neutrality. This seals the fate of the Shah's government as even loyal forces defect. Once we were named the Imperial Guard. Today, we accept whatever name people will give us. We have ordered the surrender of all units under our command. Bakhtiyar resigns and flees, while Khomeini takes control and dismantles martial law. He is now the de facto leader of Iran. So the Shah and his government have fallen, but Iran experiences revolutionary chaos in the following weeks, made worse by the 300,000 weapons in circulation after the collapse of the army. Many groups of young men self-appoint revolutionary committees. Some take up police duties, including arresting supposed counter-revolutionaries. One armed group, the Party of God, or Hezbollahis, pledged themselves to Khomeini, but he exercises only limited control. His provisional government cannot prevent revolutionary courts summarily trying and executing 68 people.
So you see, like, early aspects of the IRGC are self-recruiting, right? They're all excited and hopped up on becoming the new law, becoming the new government, becoming the new way.
Including military leaders. Tension also develops with the US. In February, protesters stormed the US embassy, resulting in a brief hostage crisis. Both sides quickly de-escalate, but the development concerns the US, who initially hoped to normalize relations with the new regime. Many in the US are stunned at the Shah's rapid collapse. How could Iran, with its oil and strategic situation between the Soviet Union and the Persian Gulf, between Europe and the Middle East, fall under the sway of a holy man out of the mists of the 13th century? How could the Shah, a monarch who commanded more tanks than the British Army, more helicopters than the United States 1st Cavalry in Vietnam, be pressured so neatly out of power?
Gaza is at a tipping point.
The answer is partly the wide inter-opposition support for Khomeini. To maintain this, he appoints moderate nationalist Mehdi Bazargan as prime minister of the new republic. In March, Khomeini orders a referendum on the question, should Iran be an Islamic republic? 98.2% answer yes. Observers note issues with voting, including color-coded ballots revealing voters' choices, but the results are largely considered legitimate. Even many moderates favor an Islamic republic and recognize the cleric's role in organizing revolution. However, Iranians disagree on...
Now, if you're wrapped up in a bunch of things and you don't know what it all means, yeah. If you don't know that they're just gonna keep doing Savak through Moise, then yeah, you're gonna be all the fuck for it, not understanding what it means because of all of that. And the IRGC operates as the militant wing of making a uniparty system out of the Iranian government. And what does it mean to be a Muslim at that time? Especially when your religious affiliation was not the issue, especially because it wasn't the issue before 1963. They said they started doing all this shit, right? I mean, ultimately, I think the fall of the Shah was inevitable anyway because royal families were falling out, and they're kind of trying to keep that alive through nepotism, which is why, like, oh, it's the Ayatollah's kids in charge, right? It's just like, here we are with this shit. So now the clergy are just looking at one of the Ayatollah's kids and picking him to be supreme leader. Right? And so it can't just be a member of the clergy. You can't just join the clergy. And then end up getting picked, right? I mean, even the Holy Roman Empire, it's just like you get to the Senate, you might get to be the Pope. And you can get to the Senate just going through the thing, right? There isn't that kind of a lockout. It's a different process in which they get you there to the top. Anyway.
On how an Islamic republic should function, moderates worry about revolutionary committees imposing strict religious morality and deteriorating international relations. Iranian-American scholar Saeed Amir Ajaman concludes, the coalition between the Shiite clerics and the westernized bourgeoisie was unstable. It rested on fraudulent silence on the part of the former and on wishful self-delusion on the part of the latter. It did not last long. Khomeini uses the divisions and the threat posed by the armed leftist groups to centralize authority. Although his regime faces some opposition, including assassinations by guerrilla groups, he maintains a stable traditionalist foundation, creates new parties, and sides with radical elements to further marginalize moderates. He also sidelines Bazargan, who wants to improve relations with the US. Events escalate again in November 1979, when the self-exiled Shah requests medical treatment in the US. Carter is reluctant, but faces pressure from Shah supporters like Henry Kissinger and David Rockefeller. When Carter finally allows the Shah temporary shelter, angry protesters again storm the US embassy in Tehran and take 52 hostages. Both sides expect a repeat of the rapidly resolved February crisis, but Khomeini hamstrings negotiations. Bazargan resigns in frustration, and Carter faces pressure to bring the hostages home by other means. So in April 1980, he orders Operation Eagle Claw, a special forces rescue raid. But 3 of the 8 US helicopters assigned to the mission suffer technical problems, while another crashes into a fuel tanker while refueling in the desert, causing an explosion that kills 8 American servicemen. The raid is a failure.
It was my responsibility as president to launch this mission. It was my responsibility to terminate the mission when it ended. This was a decision that was shared completely by the field commander in charge of the rescue team and by the officer in charge of the overall force that was involved in the rescue effort. There was a deeper failure than that of incomplete success, and that is a failure to attempt a worthy effort, a failure to try.
Eagle Claw hardens Khomeini's resolve to keep the hostages, and it's a political disaster for Carter. His approval rating is already low, and in November 1980, he loses the election to Republican Ronald Reagan. Carter's team eventually agrees to a deal with Khomeini before Reagan's inauguration. Khomeini will release the hostages in exchange for the US pledging to not interfere in Iran and unfreezing Iranian assets worth $25 billion in today's value. Iran appears to make no concessions, although some claim Khomeini secretly agrees to Israel selling arms to regional rival Iraq. The deal comes into effect 20 minutes after Reagan's inauguration.
See, that's interesting that rumor is right there. Right? And I suppose whatever position Israel was in, Iran not being completely batshit crazy, I suppose, went with a form of agreement that way.
Inauguration, freeing the hostages after 444 days. The timing has led to allegations from Iranian and US officials that Reagan covertly encouraged Khomeini to delay releasing the hostages until his presidency began. The Iranian Revolution dramatically shifts regional and global relations. Iran extends its influence across the Middle East, including by exporting Hezbollah as a militant group supporting Shia Muslim minorities in Arab states like Lebanon. The US loses a major ally in the region and looks for new allies opposed to Iranian hegemony, like Saudi Arabia and Israel. Meanwhile, anti-American rhetoric becomes a cornerstone of Khomeini's position as supreme ruler and propaganda against Iranian moderates. It's a policy that continues until today, although political analyst Suzanne Maloney notes a certain irony. By grounding its identity and legitimacy in anti-Americanism, Tehran remains just as firmly contingent upon the United States as the Shah ever was. Iran's revolution has the largest impact on its neighbors. Although Iraq's Saddam Hussein hosted Khomeini for years, this relationship of convenience soured when Iraq deported Khomeini shortly before his return to Iran. The revolution also undermines previous Iran-Iraq agreements, which resolved border disputes and barred Iran from supporting separatist Iraqi Kurds and anti-Saddam Shia movements. As Khomeini continues to suppress internal opponents throughout 1980, revolution gives way to what some call the 20th century's last total war.
My heart's fine.
To be an easy victory, cementing Saddam Hussein's legacy as defender of the Arab world. Domestically, his Ba'ath regime ruled with an iron fist, and Saddam was preparing his son Uday to one day take over. If you want to learn more about Uday Hussein, the so-called Mad Prince of Iraq, you should check out Real Life Lore's new series, Mad Kings, on Nebula. In the first episode, you'll learn more about Saddam's rule and Uday's upbringing, and his descent into madness. Mad Kings is one of many exclusive documentary series on Nebula, a streaming service we're building together with other creators. If you go to nebula.tv/realtimehistory, you can sign up for just $36 for an entire year. On Nebula, you can watch Mad Kings, exclusive documentaries from us at Real Time History, like Red Adams, the story of Chernobyl and the Soviet nuclear program, and all our regular...
Now, I'm sure that there might be a bunch of stuff that is in this guy's particular wheelhouse. This is like the end of the video. Is he wrapping it up? I think he's completely wrapping it up. Yeah, he just kind of landed the plane really funny. But
Press here at Real Time History directly. Again, that's Nebula.
Yeah. All right. Anyway. Okay. So that's that. So yeah. That's effectively the situation, right? And so the truth is that the people are in the exact same situation they were in the 1970s as they were otherwise, right? And so my goal, if I could boss the bosses of the world around, would be like, you're not allowed to have a secret police in your nation. You're not allowed to have a secret police in your nation, and you're not allowed to tell a woman to cover up anything but her genitals, which includes her boobies. All right. She covers up the naughty bits. And believe me, sometimes not even the boobies, because, like, you could be topless in New York right now. You can walk down Times Square with no shirt on. And there's a reason why most of us don't do it. Well, look, I mean, at the end of the day, they had a very, very poor, paranoid response to the issue of Western culture. Right? It's very similar to how Americans have been feeling about all this ultra weird stuff that was coming out of all this depression. It's wild. You gotta remember, we're living in under a very different narrative world now, right? Whatever CIA operation was keeping television and movies telling the stories that they were telling has fucking crippled itself. It's done. It's no longer supported. And you're watching all of their assets get shut down. And it's really sad to see, because if you're paying attention, you're not allowed to not see what's going on. And it's getting people to really, really reflect on everything. You know, if you've been sleepwalking through life and you're starting to realize some of the secrets of Jim Carrey, right? You're just like, how do you love him and how do you hate him at the same time? How do you handle the facts? How much do you want to condemn everybody? How much do you look at Donald Trump and say, do I agree that everybody in the Epstein files is guilty on just Jeffrey Epstein's written words in an email without context and redacted to the hilt, and just say, yep, that's particularly what he's guilty of? And I'm going to leave it at that, and I don't care if anybody acts accordingly. I won't be satisfied until you've, convicted him on these charges of my firm belief he is guilty of. Because I trust the word of Jeffrey Epstein in emails that I don't have complete context for. And so, what is validatable in the Epstein files is validatable, and what isn't, isn't. And you'd be weird to believe that Jeffrey Epstein didn't talk shit about people. Considering he probably saw himself in a class above Trump, when you think about it. Anyway, maybe we'll cover some more on Iran in the future, because the idea here is to look at your goddamn fucking retarded arguments and tell you how the facts of history aren't necessarily the determinative factors of the future of that place's history. Right? And especially if we're working at it and doing things like learning, like I am, and guiding wise counsel. from the best places any of us can be, from our positions, knowing very well that there are people above you, right? I will defer things in Iran to those more knowledgeable about Iran and its situation. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good night, and I'll catch you later.